The story begins with the main heroine standing by a window while her father pleads with her to save them all. The old man remarked to the girl that this was her elderly father's final request. At the same time, he asked if, perhaps, everything would be resolved thanks to her intervention. At that moment, the girl's mother shouted that they would be able to survive if she sacrificed herself. Meanwhile, the rain was forcing the father to his knees. Her brother also asked if she really wanted to bring shame upon the family that had raised her all this time. It turned out she had to live up to her name and become a heroine. The main heroine declared that they were getting on her nerves, spouting nonsense and being too loud. At that moment, her mother pretended to cry and asked if the girl really thought she felt good about sacrificing the daughter she had raised with love all these years. But now was the moment when she could repay them for all their kindness. The girl asked if her mother had really just said, with love. For her, love meant abandoning a child in an icy room, completely neglected. Then she smiled and declared how utterly shameless they all were, and such things had happened not just once or twice. She then told them not to worry about her, as she would save them after all. At the same time, the heroine knew they had latched onto her only because no one else could stop the destruction of this world. The main heroine had lived 99 different lives. As they accumulated, so did a mysterious power. Saving the world at the cost of her own life had never been a big deal for her, and she didn't regret it. However, she had no desire to see the shameless boast about their good deeds. At that moment, her father was thanking her, saying this was what he had expected from his daughter. Thanks to her salvation, their family would be able to live normally again. The heroine thought that they should finally stop this charade of playing family, as it really didn't work. Then she declared that they had indeed knelt before her, and she asked if that shouldn't come at a high price. She then declared that her miserable life, which never saw good times, would remain with them. Her mother and father were surprised by these words and asked what she was talking about. Then, an article appeared in a man's hands, and he examined it carefully. It was about the heroine who would save the world and about her cruel parents. It turned out even the imperial family had been deceived. The man asked what this was, wondering if the picture was moving. Before they could recover from the shock, a butler burst into the room. He told his master that they had serious problems. The imperial troops, who had decided to verify the article's authenticity, had invaded the mansion. Using her power, the heroine tried to escape from that place. Her father stood on the balcony, screaming for her to return immediately, asking how she dared do this. The girl should understand what would happen if she tarnished the family's honor, and he called her an ungrateful daughter. At that moment, the girl thought it would have been better if her first family had been from a noble lineage. Then the girl remembered her first life. The parents she had then considered starting a family as just one item on a life checklist. Unfortunately, after 2 children were born, she and her brother lived in complete indifference from their parents. Although the girl was never her family's favorite, she liked people. Since she was straightforward, like her parents, her affection was immediately obvious. All of it was directed at friends who offered her a helping hand. Well, at the end of that life, her friends couldn't save her in time, and the girl was hit by a truck. In her last moment, she thought, "Thank God they are okay." And so, on the threshold of her 20th birthday, she lost her life without getting the satisfaction of passing her entrance exams. But still, it had been purely her choice. In the next life, she ended up in a world on the verge of disappearance. The only hope to prevent its destruction was a death. In her first few lives, the girl sacrificed herself for her friends. Later, every person screamed that it was her duty to sacrifice herself for them. Because of all this, up until her 5th or 6th life, she kept hoping that things would get better for her. Now it was the 99th time, and she thought it was just boring. And now, the main heroine had no regrets in her life. It was more frightening to see the world descend into chaos if the moment to prevent destruction was missed. Now the girl was floating in the air, and a crowd of onlookers was watching her. The heroine, looking at them and possessing such great power, thought that they were blaming her for not saving them. However, no matter how insensitive she had become, she didn't want to see such a thing. Also, the children she was looking at deserved to live too. But after that, the main heroine looked around and thought that once again, In this life, she hadn't lived to see 20. Her average lifespan was about 17 years, and after that, the girl pleaded that she wanted it all to be over long ago. She didn't have much hope, but such foolish desires were just a matter of habit. At that very moment, her 99th death arrived. Some time after her death, the main heroine was very scared and saw doctors before her eyes. She didn't understand who they were and thought, "Is this happening again?" As a result, it turned out to be her 100th life. At that moment, the doctors were congratulating the lady, saying she had given birth to a daughter. The main heroine had hoped it would all end here, but now 100 was a 3-digit number. All of this was simply madness, a new life again. It meant she had to adjust and adapt again. The girl realized she could see poorly and wondered what they were doing. Suddenly, a maid exclaimed that the girl looked very much like the lady. The girl examined the place a little and thought, "Is this really a noble's mansion?" Because of this, she began to worry, as she couldn't use her powers on the day she was born. Suddenly, a man burst into the room, and they told the master that he had finally arrived. It turned out he had a beautiful daughter. The heroine looked at the man and wondered if this was her father. The first time she saw his face, she thought this life would also go down the drain for her. The main heroine wondered what it would be this time: neglect, abuse, or a child unblessed from above. At that very moment, her father reached for her and she thought, or death right after birth. When this world was again on the brink of destruction, she would be unable to do anything but watch the chaos. She would only observe as lives vanished before her eyes and souls scattered like dust. It would be like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up, and it would continue until the world breathed its last. The heroine thought she would rather live and endure all the suffering herself. At that moment, her own father gently touched and stroked her head. Then the man broke into a sweet smile and declared that this was their little daughter. He then thanked the baby for being born safely to them. The heroine hadn't expected this and wondered what was happening. Her new mother also had a very joyful and sweet face. She said of the girl, "This is our beloved little daughter." She also noted that she really looked very much like her. At that moment, the heroine wondered why they had such happy faces. She didn't understand how everything had suddenly changed so much. Listen, the girl thought, it would be good if things here were really normal. There was a chance her 100th life would be quiet and peaceful. At that moment, the girl's new parents were joyfully discussing something. Then the mother addressed the newborn baby and declared that her name would be Anastasia. The heroine thought that Anastasia was a truly beautiful name. The mother added that it was the name of the heroine who had saved their world. The girl immediately wondered which heroine they were talking about. She felt sick just hearing those words, because every time a heroine was mentioned, her life turned into a gutter. She was very tired of all this, as she would sacrifice herself again and become the savior. She had been foolish to expect things to be different this time. On the contrary, it was even worse. All of this irritated the girl immensely. Precisely because of this, she started crying very hard. Her own father was holding her in his arms, trying to calm her down. At that time, a girl approached the room she was in and noticed it was her little sister. And so, a month had passed since the heroine's birthday. The girl thought it was surprising that nothing special had happened during this time. At the same time, the heroine realized she had been given a heroic name. But it was still too early for her to relax, as it had been the same in her previous life. It turned out her father had said that a child with a heroic name would be blessed by God. The man had pretended to be good all the time, but in the end, he started tormenting her, frightened by her own powers. It was as if he wanted to test how helpless she was against her parents. Now the girl knew these parents had also given her a heroine's name precisely to sacrifice her. Consequently, she had no choice but to be constantly on guard. The main heroine did everything to understand her surroundings. The woman with hair black as tar and bright red eyes was her mother in this new life. The moments when she rocked the girl to sleep, she would literally drift off. She had to be careful with her, as you never know when you might fall into a trap. The man with a wolf-like appearance, the size of a mountain, and with pink hair was her father. When the man talked to her, he told Anastasia that she didn't see her daddy's face often, so she shouldn't forget it. The girl thought he was talking to her in a strange voice and wondered if it was psychological pressure. Moreover, there was always someone near the cradle where the girl lay. This person was a maid. The main heroine thought that her own parents were watching a newborn child so closely, and this was some kind of terrifying family. The girl wondered if she was a duchess again. Being an aristocrat was infinitely more irritating for her. Suddenly, the girl heard some noise coming from behind the door of the room she was in. This noise attracted the girl's attention. She wondered what was happening out there. It was her father talking to some man. He was asking him what was wrong with their daughter. The heroine heard this and thought, what are they talking about? Is he angry with her? If they were talking about her, they would probably come in soon. At that moment, the father shouted that if the youngest wasn't sick, then why didn't she laugh or cry at all? The girl thought, did he make such a fuss just because I don't cry? Then he declared that he understood everything. The man didn't know because he was incompetent. It seemed there was nothing to be done, and he had no choice but to get rid of this useless head. At that very moment, he reached for his sword to carry out the sentence. The main heroine was shocked by this turn of events. She thought, what is my father doing? Is he going to kill a man because I don't cry? Is this a new form of torture? In her previous life, the girl's parents hated hearing her cry. As a result, she didn't cry so they wouldn't kill her. Now, lying there, she thought it was all correct. She had nothing to worry about because her life was more important. After her thoughts, the girl heard the doctor begging for mercy. He swore he had checked everything thoroughly, and the young lady was indeed completely healthy. With tears in his eyes, he begged the man to believe him. The heroine thought this man was making her feel guilty. She thought, I am healthy, so let my father not touch an innocent person. At that very moment, she started crying very loudly, and the men heard it. The father immediately rejoiced and ran to the girl. He picked her up and declared that their baby had such a sweet and ringing voice. The girl looked at her father's joyful face and thought, is he really happy? Until now, when she cried loudly, only bad things happened. That's why she didn't understand why he had such a happy face now. The baby understood she still had to be on guard, but she just couldn't stop crying now. So her father hugged the girl very tightly and tenderly. Suddenly, another little girl entered the room they were in. She told her father he was a bad daddy for leaving her unattended. The heroine looked at her carefully, and their eyes met. The girl immediately thought, is this my older sister? She concluded that since she was called the youngest, she had assumed she had siblings. But until now, she hadn't met them, and now she was more concerned than happy about it. It turned out that due to special abilities in her past life, all the attention went only to her brother. That's why she wasn't the favorite child. The girl looked at her older sister and thought she mustn't give in to those cute, pouty cheeks. If the girl got upset or cried, it would be bad. Then the little girl looked carefully at the heroine and asked, is she really my little sister? It turned out she was such a cutie. The heroine was surprised and thought, what did she just say? The sister, in turn, hugged the little girl and declared that Lara had such a beautiful sister. Then the girl turned to her dad and mentioned that she and Asiya wanted pudding. The father asked, what's this, Asiya? The girl explained that Laurentia was shortened to Lara and Anastasia was shortened to Asiya. The main heroine thought, what's with this cute behavior? I really don't like it at all. As it happened, out of irony, she made some involuntary movements at that moment. The father took it as joy and asked if their Anastasia liked the nickname. The older daughter said it was indeed so, and they both hugged the girl. After that, the man said he perfectly understood her good intentions, but Anastasia was still small and couldn't eat pudding yet. It seemed if the daughter ate it for both of them, he was sure the sister would be happy. Laurentia remarked that if Lara ate it all by herself, Asiya would definitely be upset. The father asked why that was. The daughter said that she had been sick recently and only ate soups, so she was very sad she couldn't have sorbet. The heroine thought, is my sister really worried that I'll be upset about this? Lara asked earnestly, so could her little sister have just one piece? The girl thought that if she ate it, she would surely die. At the same time, she looked at the pudding and wondered if her father had done something to it. The man leaned his cheek against hers and asked what she was saying. Then he declared that he understood and heard everything she said. The girl was shocked by what was happening. The man told his older daughter that Anastasia had said Laurentia should eat all the delicious things herself. The girl asked if that was true, and the heroine thought that she really didn't care and let her eat it all instead of her. Lara started eating all the pudding and apologized in advance to her sister. Then she handed her her toy and said she would lend her her deer then. The father asked his daughter if she would be all right, since she couldn't sleep without it. The older daughter said it was fine because Anastasia was her younger sister. It seemed if she was older, she should share with her. The heroine thought this couldn't be happening. A person couldn't maintain such activity. At the same time, she mentally wished people wouldn't be so kind. The older sister asked Anastasia if she didn't like her deer. The girl begged them to hate her, like in her previous life. Lara was persistent and asked if the girl liked rabbits or tigers instead. If so, she would get them for her, just please don't cry. The heroine thought this was all bad and wondered why her own sister hated her. After that, Laurentia called the heroine and asked her to look at her. The girl glanced in her direction, and she made a funny face for her. Because of her sister's spontaneous action, the heroine even smiled a little. After that, she realized she had made a mistake and let her guard down. Then she looked at the joyful faces of her father and older sister. They were delighted by what had just happened and said it was incredible. The girl, in turn, understood she had completely failed. Rumors that Anastasia had smiled while playing peekaboo with her sister spread at an incredible speed. From that day on, the maids made strange faces in front of the girl. Some attracted her attention with funny faces, while others said they could make funnier ones. As a result, even the head physician did his best. He told the girl that when he played with his daughter, she would laugh immediately, even if she had just been crying. Naturally, her own father did it too. He made strange faces and told his little daughter to look at her daddy. Of course, the mother would shoo them all away and tell them to let her daughter rest. In such moments, the girl thought she had never seen such enemies and didn't know what to do with them. She wondered whether to surrender or get angry when they acted like that. This time, the girl noticed the maids, the physician, and her own father discussing how the girl had smiled. Watching all this, she wondered why they were all going out of their way to make her laugh. She simply couldn't understand them. Then the girl fell asleep after her mother put her to bed. And in the afternoon, the heroine woke up and saw some boy in front of her. He asked if Anastasia had finally woken up. The girl looked carefully at the boy. Then she realized it was her 5-year-old older brother, Damien. Despite his young age, he was already receiving education as the heir to the dukedom. At the same time, she knew the boy was very busy and she didn't understand why he had come to her, so it seemed she had to be very wary of him. The boy asked Anastasia what she was thinking about. The girl thought, "I want to survive." After that, the boy touched his younger sister's cheek and remarked that she was making such a serious face. Then he declared he had brought her a little present. The heroine thought with surprise, what present? For her, all of this was suspicious. She didn't understand why everyone wanted to give her something. The boy, at the same time, took out a toy and said it was his toy tiger. Then the boy mentioned that Laurentia had told him that to make his little sister smile, he needed to make an interesting face. But she had also mentioned his tiger. It was his treasure, and even though he had spent his whole childhood with it, he decided to give it to his little sister. The girl thought that for him, it wasn't just a toy. She was curious why he was giving her such a valuable thing. Damien asked if she would show him her smile then. It was very surprising for the main heroine to hear all this. She thought, did he really give up such a treasure just for that? At the same time, she wondered if her new family wanted so much to see her smile. It seemed even her brother and sister wanted it. That's why she didn't understand how it could be so important. Was it about saving the whole world? After that, the heroine decided she should do it and gave her brother a sweet smile. The boy looked carefully and with surprise at his laughing little sister. Then he himself broke into a smile and remarked that their Anastasia had really smiled. The moment he shouted this, the whole family immediately gathered around her. The heroine thought that over many lives, she had learned to always be on guard. But since it was such a beautiful day, perhaps she should believe in a miracle just this once. Although she had been disappointed many times, she would still hope for her 100th life. She also hoped that these people wouldn't turn away from her. It seemed from now on, she would live with this desire. After that, a considerable amount of time passed, and the main heroine was having her clothes fitted. The maids looked at her and said their young mistress was such a cutie, like a snow fairy. The heroine's mother also looked at her with a sweet gaze and said she was like a little angel. Then she declared they would buy everything and pay the tailor 4 times the price for these clothes. The girl couldn't believe her ears and thought, "What are they saying?" She still didn't know how to react to all this. It seemed it had all started just a few weeks ago. In the 5th month after her birth, the girl could finally see more than just her cradle. Although she was crawling on her belly, she had managed to explore many places thanks to that. Although the girl was still babbling, she could already say a few words. At that moment, her father asked her what she was saying, wondering if she loved Daddy. The girl ignored him and thought she still couldn't pronounce those words properly. Looking at all this, she thought she really was like an ordinary child. It seemed if her life were threatened, she wouldn't be able to run away. After all her energy was spent on crawling. Then the girl lay down and rolled onto her back. At the same time, she thought how surprisingly peaceful it was now. Suddenly, she looked to the side and saw her family watching her. What amazed her the most was her family. Lara joyfully declared that Anastasia had rolled over. The father looked on sweetly and confirmed that it was indeed so. At the same time, Damien told his mother that their youngest was very agile. It also seemed to them that she had rolled over earlier than ordinary children. The mother said he had taken the words right out of her mouth, for Anastasia was undoubtedly extraordinary. After that, they all decided to throw a party in honor of her first time rolling over. And so, now she was having the first party in her life to celebrate rolling onto her back. The main heroine understood this event was only for family members, but looking at the set table, she wondered why it was so grand. The older brother had prepared a little present for his younger sister. The physician, in turn, sat and said about the young lady that he was so glad she was growing up very healthy. At that moment, a maid turned to the girl, who was sitting in a special chair. She told the girl that she had done a marvelous job with the rollover and it was wonderful. Another colleague mentioned they were very happy to serve her. The main heroine recalled that when parties were held, the participants also received bonuses. But still, this was just a baby's first rollover, and she didn't understand what all the fuss was about. Everything seemed unusual to the girl here, because they all had an excessive attachment. The more they worried and cared for the girl, the more scared she became. At that time, they went out to the balcony with the family to look at the sky. A special feature of this celebration was a huge and beautiful fireworks display that everyone had come out to see. During the celebration, the mother addressed the girl and told Anastasia that from this day on, she should grow up big and healthy. It seemed she didn't even need to be good or successful, she just needed to be healthy. The girl couldn't understand this request and wondered what it all meant. This request sounded so innocent towards her. After that event, a day passed, and the main heroine was in her room. The girl thought that yesterday had been all noise, and today it was completely quiet. It turned out that after the party, the maids had gone on vacation. They said goodbye to the girl and asked if she wouldn't grow up too quickly, as they would return soon. Only one maid, who sat near the heroine's door, hadn't gone on vacation. She looked at her and thought she wasn't even 20 yet. It seemed this girl was dozing, as children needed good sleep to grow. Probably, it was all due to the busyness that accumulated towards the end of the year. It turned out even the parents had left early, and the house was quiet because of it. The older brother, in turn, was quietly studying, and the sister was sick and had to rest. The main heroine thought this was an excellent and very rare opportunity for her. Such moments were when she needed to practice standing up. After that, the girl lifted her head and noted that her goal was to climb onto the chair in front of her. The girl understood that even though she had been told not to grow too fast, she really wanted to walk already. The baby had just a little bit left to reach the chair. But suddenly, she felt someone grab her and lift her into their arms. Then she looked and saw a woman who asked if the girl was having a good time. The heroine was shocked and thought, "Who is this? I'm seeing her for the first time." This woman said the mistress had ordered her to bring her. After that, she headed for the room's exit with her. The girl thought, "Isn't my mother away right now?" And it also seemed strange that this woman hadn't even woken the maid. The heroine knew she had been through similar things not once or twice. That's why all of this seemed very suspicious now. Based on this suspicious situation, she had no other choice but to scream. At that time, she did so, but her cry couldn't break through strongly. The woman put some rag to her face, covering her mouth. She also said she would take good care of her. The rag was soaked in some liquid, and because of this, the heroine immediately fell asleep. The strange woman told the heroine to just sleep peacefully for a bit. Sometime later, the girl was in the arms of some mysterious stranger who was running away with her. After a short while, the heroine felt shaking, discomfort, and some strange sounds. That's why she woke up and noticed she was in someone's arms. She understood it definitely wasn't that woman and wondered what had already happened. She wondered if she had really been kidnapped. At that moment, she looked at the building nearby and saw the estate where she had been living all this time. So she decided that, fortunately, this man hadn't run far. With sadness, the main heroine realized she had been too careless. It seemed she should have been more wary of her own surroundings. Then the little girl realized it wasn't like that, and she just needed to pull herself together. At the same time, she was glad it was just a kidnapping. After all, she didn't know what would have happened if her family had been killed. It seemed she would have had to just watch it all again. All because she was only 6 months old and couldn't do anything in such a situation. Now she thought about what to do and if she could find out her destination. It was a bit tense, but she could use her teleportation power. Still, she was curious why she had been kidnapped. Was it a crime against the Duke, or did they know about her power? In any case, the risk was worth it to learn the truth. The girl thought she could crack them in 1 or 3 days. And during that time, she wouldn't be able to return home, but she would try to resolve everything as quickly as possible. The girl didn't want her family to worry too much. It seemed she would send them a message through a dream that she would return soon. Then they would be a bit calmer. Just as the main heroine thought all this, she and the man heard flying arrows. At that moment, several arrows hit the man carrying the girl, and he immediately fell. He immediately asked what this was. The answer was shouted at him to shut his mouth. The heroine was in pain and thought, "Did I just hear a child's voice?" After that, the girl raised her head and saw a boy aiming his weapon at the attacker. Then he asked the mysterious stranger what he thought he was doing. He and the girl exchanged glances, and the boy remarked that this young lady had a meeting with him today. The girl didn't understand who he was and wondered who he could be. The man asked what was happening, wondering if the Duke's son was before him. Then he got up and shouted for the boy to get out of the way. The girl, however, stared intently at the boy and thought she was seeing him for the first time. As the man with the heroine started running further, more knights appeared from behind the mountain. They were shouting that the younger Duchess was with this man. The man saw them and thought, "Have they already spotted me?" After all, very little time had passed since the girl's kidnapping. Then he looked to the side and saw the boy who had attacked him lying nearby. The boy told the man that if he didn't want to fight, he should just hand over the young lady and run. The interlocutor told him to stop pursuing him, as he had his own reasons. At that time, the boy looked at him very coldly and declared that if he tried to make excuses, he would really slit his throat. The girl continued to watch him intently and thought he was probably the same age as her brother. And yet, he was such a fierce person. This couldn't be considered just for show, as he held the sword firmly and correctly. It seemed the girl felt this boy also wielded magic. His magical energy was so strong it reached the sword, and the heroine didn't understand who he really was. A moment later, the boy attacked the man ahead with his power. The girl realized he was attacking, and although it wasn't excessive, she would have to use her defensive magic. After that, she closed her eyes, but then felt no pain. So she opened her eyes to see what had just happened. Then she saw she was in the boy's arms, and he was asking her how she was. The boy asked if she had been very scared and if anything hurt. It seemed if she wasn't crying, then everything was fine. At that moment, the girl thought she really was okay. While they were discussing all this, the attacker got up and wanted to attack the boy and the girl. The heroine thought he should be careful. Even if he was good in a fight, he was still just a child. A moment later, the girl realized she had no choice but to use her power. So she used it, and immediately the man was attacked. After that, he immediately fell to the ground, and the boy asked what had just happened. After all, he hadn't even had time to do anything, and this man was already down. It was quite hard for the girl, and she felt as if her lungs had been crushed. It seemed she needed to be more careful and use her power moderately in her child's body. The boy saw something was wrong with the girl and asked the little one what was wrong, if she was scared or cold. The main heroine thought he was the one who was most scared. At that very moment, the boy took off his outer clothing and wrapped it around the girl. Then he declared everything would be fine, as she would be warm soon. At that moment, he hugged her tightly, and the girl thought it felt so soft. While this was happening, the knights who were supposed to protect the main heroine finally arrived. They immediately seized the attacking man and then ran to the girl. Ahead of them was the older brother, Damien, who addressed Anastasia. He asked the girl to open her eyes, as her brother had come. The man who had attacked the main heroine was addressing the young master, begging for mercy. It seemed he had reasons for all this and asked to be heard. The boy looked at him coldly and very sternly, then declared he would go with them until his father returned. It seemed until that moment he would have to find out everything. After a short time, the main heroine was in her crib. At the same time, the girl was floating, but through her sleep, she heard her parents talking. The mother said she thought it was still too early, as the girl was small, but if such a thing had happened, they needed to act now. The Duke remarked that it was so, and for the sake of the children, he would try to do everything as soon as possible. The girl opened her eyes and saw her parents before her. At the same time, she wondered how long she had slept. The parents saw the girl's open eyes and asked if Anastasia was awake. The little one made some sound, and the father immediately shouted that Anastasia was awake and the maid should call the physician immediately. Then he asked if their little one had been very scared. He also declared that Daddy should have been nearby, but thought His Majesty's order was more important. The heroine thought that was indeed true, as his orders were more important because he was the Duke. It seemed she had lost consciousness only because she had spent a lot of her energy. Her body had reacted that way only because it wasn't ready. The parents looked sad, and the father immediately apologized to his own daughter. The girl looked at them carefully and thought these people were truly so kind to her. She didn't want to hurt them at all and wished to grow up quickly. Sometime later, the main heroine was sitting in a chair, and a crowd of knights lined up before her. Then they knelt before the girl and declared they would be loyal to their mistress. The girl looked at them in surprise and wondered who all these people were. At that time, her father addressed her and declared that from now on, all these people would protect her. Then he asked if the girl thought they would be enough. The reason for the recent kidnapping turned out to be very banal. The son of a maid working in the mansion had insurmountable debts. People mired in debt had noticed how her parents spent huge amounts of money on her. That's why they foolishly decided to kidnap her during the vacation and exchange her for money. And fortunately, the older brother's friend of the main heroine quickly found them and stopped it. They said the kidnappers were thrown out of the mansion with fractures in several places. They also said the parents had been lenient with them. In any case, the girl thought guards were a good solution for her sister or brother. But still, why present 20 people to an infant? Again, the father addressed Anastasia and declared these were the knights who had sworn allegiance to her. At the same time, he asked her to say something approving to them. The main heroine looked at her father in surprise and thought, what can a 6-month-old child say? And who in their right mind would be happy about words of approval from a child? Suddenly, the girl paid attention to her knights and noticed they were already inspired. It seemed they were shouting that they would do their best and were rejoicing for their mistress. The girl realized they were already happy. The heroine still couldn't understand them. She didn't want to say anything, just babbled at them. At the same time, she thought, please take care of me. All the knights looked at her carefully and were very sweet and joyful from the sound they heard. After that, they swore they would do their best for their mistress and take care of her. The heroine realized it was time for her to accept the reality happening to her. A month had passed since the knight's oath. It turned out 2 people constantly guarded her room from the inside. Another 2 were stationed outside. The older the girl got, the easier it was for her to reach previously inaccessible places. It seemed when she turned 1, it would be even easier, but for now, she was only 7 months old. The last kidnapping was just for money, but it seemed her family would often be put in an awkward position. On the day of the kidnapping, the girl's parents had left with tense expressions. Usually, they left the house together, as this ducal family definitely had enemies. If it weren't so, they wouldn't have assigned guards to the children. There were no other reasons for placing so many knights. The heroine wondered if she should try to use her power, but within her limits. Then she realized she shouldn't, because if she got a high fever again, they would start to worry. She simply didn't want to see her parents' faces so sad. The heroine still didn't wish to sit idle. After all, the duty to stop the world's fall lay on her. As the girl tried to climb onto a chair, someone addressed her and asked where she was rushing. The girl turned towards that person, thinking the voice was familiar. There the little one saw her brother, Damien, sitting and addressing Anastasia. The little one realized it was her older brother and decided she would just crawl to him. Then the girl crawled to him, and they hugged tightly. The boy was surprised she had crawled to him so quickly. Then he remarked that their Anastasia was already so big. After that, he patted the girl on the head, and the little one thought that he was also just a child saying this to her. Then the girl looked at his expression and thought it was different from the one he usually had. Then the boy told his younger sister that his friend wanted to see her. He also said she had already met him and asked if she remembered. The heroine thought about her brother's friend and remembered it was definitely the boy who had saved her. Damien asked if she remembered him and if she wanted to meet him again. The heroine at that moment made a sound, signaling her agreement. At the same time, the girl thought she had been worried about all this. After all, this boy wielded magic, and he was definitely unfamiliar, but she felt as if she knew him. She understood that if a person reincarnated often, they met acquaintances in other worlds. Every human soul had its own waves. Usually, when meeting a familiar soul, she didn't pay attention to it. But now, this boy wasn't just familiar. She felt some strange sense of longing. It seemed an excellent chance, and she needed to find out who he really was. The older brother at that time looked at his thoughtful little sister and remarked that it seemed Mikkel had taken a liking to his sister. The boy was just arriving at the estate by carriage. The subordinates told the young duke they had finally arrived. The boy asked if they had really arrived, as time had flown by so quickly. Then he got out of the carriage and remarked that this was perfect, as now he would go and meet the Duchess. The girl's older brother, Damien, went to meet his friend. Then he asked if he would keep his promise, and he agreed. He also told the boy to be polite to her, and he agreed to that too. After that, the joyful Mikkel entered the room and remarked that he had finally met the Duchess. The girl was sitting in a chair surrounded by her maids. Seeing the boy, she thought he had finally come. Then Mikkel came closer to the girl, and they began to examine each other intently. He also said this was surprising, as the girl was so small. The main heroine looked at him carefully and thought she seemed to recall something, but just couldn't remember. In 2,000 years, she had met only a few such people and should recognize them immediately. After that, the boy waved his hand in front of her and then presented his fist. Damien asked what he was doing, as he hadn't even greeted her. He added that Anastasia wasn't a doll to him. Mikkel told him she was still a child. The older brother shouted at him not to call her that, as she was the younger Duchess. The girl thought her brother was being too childish, but he was her brother, acting like a real child. The friend laughed, and Damien asked why he was laughing. The girl thought he was the picture of calm, but was glad to see him acting his age. After that, Mikkel said he should introduce himself one way or another. So he approached the girl, took her hand, and bowed. He said he was pleased to meet the younger Duchess. Then he introduced himself, saying his name was Mikkel Levintes from the archducal family. The moment he said this, he kissed the little girl's hand, shocking her. Her older brother was also shocked and shouted at Mikkel that even he hadn't kissed her hand. Mikkel Levintes is the sole heir of the Archduke. After their first meeting, he spent over half a month at their home. Since the current Archduke was very busy with political affairs, he decided to study with his childhood friend. Thanks to this, lately, all the maids' interest was occupied by Mikkel. They talked about him even more than about their own family. The maids, when they saw him, would say he had come again today. The girl understood he was truly friends only with her brother, but she didn't understand why he came to see her so often. And now he had come and told the little one he had arrived. The girl thought he had arrived earlier than usual today. The boy approached her and asked how the girl was doing. At that moment, cold water droplets fell on the heroine, and she wondered if it was liquid. Mikkel saw this and immediately apologized, asking if droplets had gotten on her. He remarked it happened because he couldn't come to the Duchess in an improper state, so he had washed up. The main heroine thought he really said everything so smoothly, and he didn't resemble a 6-year-old boy. Then the boy told the little one that if he gave her this thing, would she smile? He had a precious red gem in his hands, and the girl thought, he's at it again. It turned out that from some point on, endless gifts had started with the goal of making her smile. It had all begun a few days ago. Mikkel asked the maids why the girl didn't smile. They told the boy that few had seen their younger mistresses smile. Another maid said that was true, and he needed to get close to her, and then perhaps he would see it. The boy asked if that was really so. That's why, from that day on, Mikkel started looking for things she would like. The older brother told him it was useless, as Anastasia only smiled for him. But her sister also said she had smiled for her. The boy also became sad and succumbed to the innocent provocation of the brother and sister. It seemed whenever he had time, he would come to her with various jewels. And now the girl sighed deeply and turned away from him. At the same time, the little one thought, who gives such things to children? Mikkel at that time asked if little ones like her also sighed. The heroine thought it seemed she had started growing slower, and was it because of him? At the same time, she understood it was a stupid excuse, but she noticed she couldn't use magic. Mikkel, at that time, remarked she would look really cute if she took this jewel. The girl again tried to reach for the chair and thought, such is the human soul. She was worried because she still couldn't walk, and the people here weren't rushing her. It seemed this was her well-fed life as a child, and she wondered if she could afford to delay now. While she was trying to climb onto the chair, Mikkel secretly slipped the ruby he had been holding all this time into her hood. That's why the girl lost her balance and immediately started to fall down. The maid and the boy were both very frightened, and he managed to grab the girl at the last moment. The woman immediately ran to the young mistress and asked if she was all right. The girl thought, did I lose my balance? It seemed her head had suddenly become very heavy. At the same time, Mikkel apologized to the girl and said he had just wanted to give her the ruby but didn't know she would fall because of it. The girl thought, what is he saying? And suddenly saw the ruby really was lying near her. After that, the boy realized that the moment she stood up, her head had suddenly become heavy because he had put the ruby in her hood at that moment. She thought it was insolent, as he wanted to shame her. Then she tried to say something and attempted to say she hated him. It was all quite loud, and the maids watched the situation intently. The boy immediately asked if she really hated him. The girl made an affirmative sound, agreeing with her own words. At the same time, she turned away, pretending to be angry with the boy. He sat down next to her and asked why she was sending him away, as he had really made a mistake. It seemed he had put too large a ruby, but he just thought it would suit her. The maids were talking aside at that very moment. The head maid said it was amazing how he had understood what the girl wanted to say. Her interlocutor said it really was so. The main heroine thought this irritated her even more. After all, it turned out her family couldn't understand her, but this boy managed it so easily. Her sister and brother were upset about it. Her mother said she lacked parental skills, and her brother and sister said they couldn't understand a word she said. It seemed Mikkel had also saved her. He, of course, had shown nobility, but she was reluctant to upset her family more. Then Mikkel asked if she wanted to learn to walk, he could help her. The girl tried to say she didn't want to. Her speech was quite unclear, but the boy said she didn't want to and spoke well for a little one. Then he asked how she managed it. The girl thought it really annoyed her that he considered her too small. The boy said he really could help, as it hadn't even been half a year since he started walking. Hearing such words, the main heroine was speechless and thought, how in just half a year? After all, she couldn't even stand properly at 7 months. Mikkel continued that he had been excellent at it in childhood and asked if the girl really didn't want to learn from him. The main heroine thought it was incredible, but still very tempting. She also understood she was growing up in normal conditions for the first time, but didn't know how to be a child. She still wanted to stop crawling, but didn't want to receive help from this nasty boy again. The boy at that time held out his hand to her and asked whether to teach her or not. The girl looked carefully at his smiling face. Then she wondered why the boy was smiling like that. At the same time, it seemed to her he strongly resembled her brother for some reason. A moment later, the heroine finally held out her hand and noted she was accepting help not because he resembled him. She was doing it only because she wanted to grow up quickly. Seeing such an interesting picture, the maids were simply shocked. At that very moment, the main heroine looked at Mikkel's satisfied face. She thought, does he have such a strange face again? I'm seeing this expression for the first time. After that, the little one decided it was all strange and told him to teach her soon. So she started waving her hand and saying something. Mikkel said he understood everything and would help her stand and move too. Then the boy gently took the girl by the hand and tried to lift her. The girl felt she was standing on her own feet and standing firmly. The maids at that moment addressed the young mistress and declared she had really managed to stand. The main heroine looked carefully at her feet and thought, did he make me stand so easily? The boy at that time remarked he had told her he would help. The little one immediately thought, how did he really manage to do it? Mikkel took both her hands and said that since she was standing, she could walk then. The girl thought she needed to wait a bit, as she wouldn't start walking right away. But the boy was persistent, and suddenly the girl was able to walk. Looking at this, she thought, am I really walking? After that, she even smiled and thought she could finally do it. The maids were shouting that these were the young mistress's first steps, and they had seen them with their own eyes. At that very moment, a book that the older brother, Damien, had dropped hit the floor with a thud. The girl looked at him and thought, has my brother come? Are my lessons over already? The joyful Mikkel told his friend to look, as the Duchess was holding on to him and walking excellently. The girl thought her brother was really in shock now. After that, she tried to break free and wanted him to let her go. Mikkel told the little one not to do that, or she would fall again. The brother heard this and asked what that meant, fall again. Immediately, Damien picked up the girl and asked Anastasia if she had really fallen. The maid said it was so, but not hard, as she hadn't even cried. The boy said she had still fallen. Mikkel joined the conversation and said it had all happened because of him. He wanted to give her a gift, but it had turned out like this. The boy asked if his sister had really fallen because of him. The interlocutor said it wasn't quite like that, as he had protected her head. Damien asked if she could have hit her head too. Immediately after that, he coldly told Mikkel Levintes that he forbade him from seeing Anastasia. The girl thought, what is my brother doing? At that moment, Mikkel told Damien he hadn't meant to, as she had only bumped lightly. But he didn't want to listen and told him he had said enough and to leave. After all, if not for him, the girl wouldn't have been in danger. The main heroine thought they had really quarreled seriously. Mikkel said that was all well and good that he had a sister. The older brother of the heroine turned his head towards him and looked intently. The girl thought how things had turned out like this. She realized it would have been better if they were both ordinary children. It seemed unlike their peers, these two resembled immature adults more. In such a situation, the adult child didn't know what was best to do. The girl understood that if left like this, the situation would only worsen, and she didn't want that but could do nothing. It seemed she had no choice but to resolve it that way. The main heroine thought about Damien's situation. It turned out that after his studies, her brother loved reading books with his younger sisters. Everyone would fall into a nap from his calming voice. Sometime later, the rumbling of Laurentia's stomach would be their alarm clock for a snack. This was Damien's favorite moment in life. So it turned out that, after Mikkel saved his sister, the older brother had lost all of this. Next, the main heroine thought about Mikkel's situation. It turned out the only member of his family was his constantly busy grandfather. He was seeing a small child for the first time, so he was very surprised. That's why he didn't know how to handle her. Before this, he had spent almost all his time only with swords. There were no evil intentions on his part, he simply knew nothing. Then there was Anastasia's situation, and in the end, all this was happening only because of her. One day, the boy had annoyed her so much that she said one word. Quite indistinctly, she told Mikkel to go away. The boy asked if she had really told him to go away. He also asked if she had just said his name. It seemed this situation had become the start of the trouble. The fact that the first name she said was his, and not someone from the family, upset everyone. So it turned out they spent the whole day asking her to say their names. Now it turned out that even her first steps in this day were with Mikkel. The girl thought about how upset her brother must have been when he saw this situation, and she understood that therefore, the blame lay entirely on her. Now she decided she would have to use that method, as she simply had no other choice. Then the girl took in air and immediately started crying fiercely. Everyone immediately paid attention to her, not understanding what had happened. The main heroine cried for a long time, and no one could calm her down. The older brother asked Mikkel what this was. He said the girl was scared, as she didn't like something. Damien told Anastasia it was all her brother's fault. Mikkel also joined in and said he was also wrong in this situation. The girl thought they shouldn't apologize to her, but to each other. After that, she pushed her brother and pointed her finger at Mikkel. With this action, the girl indicated they needed to make up with each other. Then they approached each other, and silence fell in the room. Mikkel apologized for endangering his precious sister. Damien said he should also forgive him, he shouldn't have said such things. It turned out he had seen them having fun together, and that's why he had said it. After that, the friend told Damien he didn't know how to interact with children, so he asked if he could teach him how to do it. The older brother became flustered because of the words he had said earlier. Mikkel noticed this and said he really didn't know how to do it, so he was asking him to teach him. It seemed he respected his sister, as he had said not to touch her, and he had done it without permission. The main heroine immediately thought, "Is that why he didn't catch me that time?" Mikkel asked Damien he didn't know what could be dangerous for her. So now he was holding out his hand to him, needing help. The older brother of the heroine smiled sweetly at him and also took his hand. At the same time, he said he would, of course, help, as he was his friend. Mikkel asked if they were at peace then. The interlocutor said they were. Then he asked if he could still come here, and Damien said he, of course, could. The brother's friend immediately broke into a sincere smile and said that was just excellent. The girl looked at him and thought they were so noble, like from a painting. At the same time, she thought she hadn't cried in so long that she was very tired. The boys looked carefully at the main heroine, and it seemed to them she was falling asleep. At the same time, they wished Anastasia sweet dreams. The girl thought her eyelids were so heavy, and it would be fine if she slept a bit. Sometime later, the main heroine opened her eyes and found herself in some strange place. At the same time, she understood she had fallen asleep in her brother's arms, but didn't understand what this place was, or if it was a dream. Then the girl thought she needed to wake up then, but the moment she thought this, she heard someone calling for her help. That's why she immediately turned her head to see what was wrong. There the girl saw some strange thing, resembling a cocoon. It was completely entwined with chains hanging on it. A voice calling for help was heard from the center of this strange object. The main heroine wondered what this was, as her subconscious wasn't listening. At the same time, her body was moving on its own, and she wondered what this huge entity was. At the same time, the girl thought it definitely couldn't be alive, and asked it what it was. The voice from the object said she was the only one who understood it. The heroine thought, "How am I the only one who understands it?" Her hands were reaching for that strange object, and she begged them to stop. She didn't understand how this entity could understand her at all. She was also very curious if this entity had reincarnated 200 times. When the main heroine's hands touched that object, a huge explosion sounded, and something burst out of the cocoon. The main heroine looked at the girl who had appeared from there. That girl told Anastasia not to forget that she was the only one. Then the strange creature reached its hands towards the girl and tried to grab her face, but suddenly it stopped and said there were interferences again. At the same time, the world around the girl began to gradually fade, and she heard a strange voice. And so the little one woke up and saw someone addressing her. When she opened her eyes, she saw she was in her own room. After that, she shifted her gaze to the people and saw it was Mikkel who had been addressing her, and in his hands was some strange blue orb. Her parents were there, as well as her brother and sister. The girl wondered why they were all here. The mother, joyfully but with tears in her eyes, approached the girl. At the same time, she gently stroked her and said she was their little baby. It turned out the fever hadn't subsided for a week, and she asked if the girl could imagine how worried they all were. The main heroine thought, "Was I unconscious for a whole week?" The sister, with tears in her eyes, told Anastasia she would be sick instead of her. But the brother said she shouldn't, as then he would be sick instead of her. Suddenly, the father joined their conversation and told the children he would take the sickness for all of them. Mikkel stood aside, watching intently what was happening. At that moment, the man approached the boy and put a cloth on his head to wipe it. Then he said he was very grateful to him, as it was all thanks to him alone. The boy said he shouldn't thank him, as it was the only thing he could do. The Duke said he really shouldn't be modest. After all, this week had been simply hell for them, and it turned out he had brought the family treasure, the blue orb, with him. Before this, the Duke and Duchess had been told that Anastasia had been cursed, and they were horrified. The man said they had been very frightened by the physician's words, and thanks to Mikkel's treasure, Anastasia had finally woken up. At that time, the main heroine's mother also sincerely thanked the boy. The girl thought Mikkel had done it again. It seemed he had made such a difficult journey, and she was in his debt yet again. After that, she heard her parents talking about a curse and now started thinking about it. It seemed after countless lives, she had developed immunity to such treachery. Something had drawn her into that dream, and that creature could easily nullify all her accumulated power. The main heroine had known that a well-fed life wouldn't be so peaceful for her either. It had been so good here that she had briefly forgotten her destiny. That very destiny of saving someone or something. To use her power properly, she needed to grow up quickly. And on top of that, to avoid all her debts. At that time, the mother addressed her own daughter and asked Anastasia to be healthy. So first of all, the girl thought she still had to play the role of the youngest. After that, a short amount of time passed. The main heroine thought that for a month, she had been falling asleep peacefully for the first time in many years. Her body was growing, but even slight use of power led to a fever. Fortunately, she hadn't encountered any uninvited guests in her dreams anymore. Gradually, time passed, and the girl was now 9 months old. Now the heroine was in her room, and her father was there. He knelt down and asked his daughter to come to him. The girl was standing near her favorite chair and saw her father calling her. Then she decided she could indeed walk by herself and tried to do so. Step by step, she gradually covered the distance, but suddenly she heard she was falling as she couldn't maintain her balance. At the moment the girl was about to fall, her father caught her. He hugged her and said she was his youngest. Then he asked if his little one had really managed to walk by herself. After that, the Duke addressed the knights and asked if they had seen it. After all, it turned out the youngest had walked on her own 2 feet. At that time, the girl thought she had only walked a little, and without him, she would have surely fallen. The knights were delighted and immediately declared it had been simply grand. It turned out it was a touching and impressive sight. The female knight remarked she had seen this moment with her own eyes. The girl looked at them in surprise and wondered why admire 3 clumsy steps so much. But still, one way or another, it was real progress for her. Her body was growing, and using magic was easier now. It also seemed gathering information had become quite easy for her. One day, the heroine heard her mother talking with a maid about making a festive dress for April. And so, she found out a festival was planned for April. She also found out Mikkel's visiting schedule. After all, he had said he would come to the Duke's mansion no later than mid-April. She also learned about the title and history of this family. When she heard her older brother's lesson, it said the Duchy of Endelven was a historic place. It seemed the girl was still worried she wasn't growing fast enough. Fortunately, the ability to gather all this information reassured her. At that time, the main heroine's father declared that their little one had managed to walk by herself. Then he addressed his subordinates and asked about her, if they were training diligently. The girl thought in surprise what relation childhood achievements had to the knight's training. She thought the man was acting like a real boss. The knights declared enthusiastically that they couldn't compare with their mistress's heart and were training diligently. It seemed they would do their best not to fall behind their mistress's successes. Then the Duke remarked he had heard that when Mikkel visited last time, Anastasia had fallen. The knights immediately hesitated in their response and didn't know what to say. The man continued, saying spring had come, and it was time to check all the knights' skills. They asked if the Duke meant a competition. The man told them that at the April festival, they would hold a martial arts tournament. Therefore, they all needed to be ready. The girl wondered if her father was using her as a pretext to check the knight's skills. Just then, he lifted the girl up and declared that, naturally, the main heroine of the festival must be ready too. At that time, she thought, what does naturally mean now? Suddenly, the door to her room swung open and her sister ran in, addressing Anastasia. The girl immediately hugged her little sister and didn't let her go. So it turned out Anastasia and Lara were the main heroines of this festival. Sometime later, the maids and the main heroine's mother were discussing what they would do. One of the girls said the young mistress's hair was still short, and she wondered if it would be better to put something on her head. Another girl remarked that a headband with a ribbon would perfectly match the dress's color. The Duchess said it was spring, so perhaps they should use yellow fabric. The maid asked her what dress she had worn for the first time as a child. The interlocutor said if she meant her dress, she thought it was white with some yellow decorations. The interlocutor immediately said then a yellow dress would perfectly suit the little mistress. Then the maids continued, saying they were so similar, as they were beautiful and elegant from birth. They had the same hair color and ruby eyes, so the girl was perfectly similar to her. The Duchess remarked that when her husband first saw Anastasia, he was so happy she looked very much like her. He had said he wanted a child who would look very much like her. Then she took the fabric in her hands and said that for the competition, they would dress their girl in a yellow dress. At her young age, such a bright color would surely look very cute. The maid said she would look like a cute little chick. The Duchess asked if they thought she would resemble a forsythia flower. At that very moment, another woman addressed them and told the mistress not to worry. It seemed they could combine both ideas into one. The Duchess asked if that was really true, as it was just excellent. Then she said their youngest had few dresses, so she asked if the woman could make something out of all this. Her interlocutor was surprised, and the main heroine's mother added for her to make it very beautiful. After that, with a sweet smile on her face, the woman asked if she could really do it. After the father's sudden announcement of the competition, preparations for the festival became more lively. The knights protecting the girl said they would definitely win. It seemed they did 3,000 sword strikes every day. The knights voluntarily trained all night in all sorts of strange ways. Several maids discussed among themselves what embroidery they would do. One interlocutor told one of them she planned to embroider flowers and the initials of a knight she liked. The girl knew many maids blushed at the thought of a love confession. It seemed this spring was a good period for everyone. Some time later, mid-April arrived, and it was the day of the martial arts competition. At that time, the main heroine was being fed and asked to open her mouth. A drop fell from the spoon being brought to the girl's mouth, and another maid immediately noticed it. The head maid said how many times had she said that on a day like this, they needed to be even more careful. After all, what would this girl do if a stain appeared on the dress? Her interlocutor had no choice but to apologize constantly. It seemed for this day, they had specially sewn a dress for the young mistress, so she needed to pull herself together. When the girl tried it on, they said it was magnificent. The yellow color of the dress suited the girl perfectly, and it was excellent work from their seamstress. The heroine's mother said the madam had done wonderfully, and she was doubling the cost for this dress. The maid continued to scold her subordinate and said if it got ruined, they would both be thrown out. The girl thought nothing had happened, and why was everything so unusual today? At that time, the main heroine reached out her hands to the maid being scolded and said something. That girl asked the young mistress if she was comforting her now. Because of this, she ran to her and said she knew their mistress had a very kind soul. She was so jealous of whoever would be next to her today. At the same time, she wondered who would be her partner at the festival. The head maid said he would arrive soon, so they needed to clean up here. The girl thought, is all this fuss because of a partner? Sometime later, they announced that the main heroine's partner had finally arrived, and they told him to enter the room. The girl thought she was unlucky, so between two options, the worse one always won. And so, right now, Mikkel entered her room and greeted the little one. The girl thought it seemed they hadn't seen each other for a month. The boy approached her and said, "Little mistress, to your regret, I will be your partner today." Then he asked if she hadn't liked being in his arms before. This time, he had trained a lot. That's why he knelt down and asked the little mistress to allow him to accompany her today. The heroine hadn't expected such a turn and was shocked. Sometime later, the Duchess was speaking on stage. She asked for the attention of all participants. Then she asked for the winner of this tournament to receive not only a monetary prize, but also a special gift. Everyone immediately paid attention and wanted to know what this gift would be. The woman declared that Laurentia and Delvin herself would present them with flowers. Also, the main heroine, who was in Mikkel's arms, was brought to the stage. And her mother declared that she, Anastasia, and Delvin would also personally present them with flowers. The girl immediately thought the boy had shouted about training, but his child-holding skills were terrible, as she was very uncomfortable now. The knights protecting the main heroine immediately became inspired. One girl declared she would definitely get flowers from the younger mistress. Immediately, her friend said she was talking nonsense, as he would win for young Mistress Lara. But suddenly, another man said they shouldn't worry, as he would get the flowers and give them to young Master Damien. The mother then asked her son and daughters to say one word each to support their knights. The older daughter said Lara was cheering for them and wanted them to do their best. Damien immediately said he believed they would win and asked them not to let him down. Then it was the main heroine's turn, and her mother told her so. The girl thought, do I have to talk too? After all, she couldn't say anything properly. She could only utter strange words incoherently. Suddenly, the heroine, Mikkel, addressed her and told her not to worry, as he would translate all her words. The girl thought the problem wasn't that at all right now. At that moment, she looked at all her subordinate knights, and they lined up and sweetly awaited what the girl would say. So she understood there was no choice in this situation, and she needed to say something. After that, the main heroine reached out her hand and said something indistinct. Mikkel asked if everyone had heard the young mistress's words. They must win. The knights immediately said, "Young mistress, we will give it our all." Then the girl exhaled and thought that was good. Suddenly, Mikkel addressed her and asked if she would say a word to him too. The girl looked at him in surprise, and the boy remarked he would be participating too. The little one thought, is he really going to participate? And it seemed he planned to compete with these huge, scary knights. Because of the kidnapping, she, of course, knew his abilities were better than a novice's. But the difference in strength and endurance couldn't be ignored. And what if he got hurt? After all, the boy was just a 6-year-old child. Mikkel asked if she would wish him victory. After all, he was sure if the girl supported him, he would definitely win. The heroine thought she couldn't understand what was in people's heads. At that very moment, the girl grabbed the boy's clothes and mumbled something. The boy asked if she was telling him not to get hurt. He also asked if she didn't want him to win. The girl made an affirmative sound. The whole dialogue only made the boy laugh, and he immediately put the little one down on the ground. Then, with a smile on his face, he said he needed to try harder to show her his best side. After that, Mikkel said he would obey her and return safe and sound. But still, he asked if he won, would the little one say he was cool? The main heroine immediately turned her head away, pretending she knew nothing. The boy remarked, "Is she pretending not to understand again?" The girl thought the boy must have remembered that moment when she said her brother was cool. A child remained a child. After the girl's thoughts, they announced the first contest would begin. The girl looked carefully at the stage and thought it would all start soon. She also wondered where her father was, as he was the organizer after all. Suddenly, the girl heard their father addressing Laurentia and Anastasia. The girl looked down in surprise and thought why her father's voice was coming from the arena. The man, in turn, stood on the arena and waved at them, declaring that Daddy would get flowers from them. The girl looked at him and thought her father really was like an adult participating in a children's fight. The Duke continued waving his hand and asked his son and daughters if they were looking at him. At that time, the heroine's mother said their papa was a bit strange. The older brother told Anastasia they shouldn't stand by the railing, as it was quite dangerous. The girl thought her father didn't look cool in front of his family. He resembled an immature boy. And so, after a while, everyone took their seats and sat on chairs. Lara shouted, "Papa, you're cool," and that she was cheering only for him.